Create Art Podcast, Project National Novel Writing Month, and National Podcast Post Month. Hello, friends. This is Timothy Chemo Bryan, your head instigator for Create Art Podcast, where I take my 20 plus years of experience in the arts and education world and help you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. Well, it's November. Can you believe it? For me, that means celebrating my favorite holiday, which is Thanksgiving. Also, this is my third year for National Novel Writing Month, and where I'll be writing a 50,000 word novel and podcasting every day for National Podcasting Post Month. Killing two birds with one stone. So you're going to hear from me every day in the month, reading the daily output of the novel. I'd appreciate any comments that you have, so please feel free to let me know what you're thinking. You can email me, timothy@createartpodcast.com, or if you go right to the website on each day, you can post your comments right there on the post. Now, why do I do this? Well, if I'm going to ask you to be brave out there and share your work, then I better do it myself. Plus, it keeps my creative muscle going. And who knows what's going to come out of my keyboard here. The podcasting side of the house, it helps me develop my podcasting skills in editing, posting, show notes, all that other stuff that hopefully you don't hear too much of. Now, you can find out about National Novel Writing Month by going to my website and in the show notes, and I'll have the links there for you. And also, National Podcasting Post Month also is going to be in the show notes. So here's today's output. All right, everybody, we are on 10 November 2022. We are a third of the way there. Today I got in 1,729 words, and that brings my total to 15,620. And for all of you in the United States tomorrow, happy Veterans Day. I am a veteran of the United States Air Force. And to those of you that are outside of the United States, have a wonderful Friday. Saturday, I will more than likely be taking off and spending time with the family. So tomorrow you should receive an episode. But on Saturday, the 12th of November, probably won't have an episode. Here we go with today's write. The sky had cleared from the fog earlier in the day that helped camouflage Wolfgang's escape. Detective Courtney had on his best suit for TV appearances. The police chief and the mayor were in attendance as they stood in front of the police station. The podium with microphones from various news agencies were attached, and the mayor began the conference. I'm sorry to have to address the fine citizens of Aylwell this way, but the unthinkable has happened. We have an individual who's attacked one of our schools, Swan Victor Elementary School, to be exact. And there is one reported casualty, one of the children. This is not who we are as a community. We do not accept this type of violence or any type of violence in our community. We don't know who this individual or individuals are, but we will find them and prosecute them to the fullest extent of the law. Since we don't have the individual in custody, we are asking for the community to be vigilant about their surroundings. If you see something, say something. Our prayers are with the family impacted by the tragedy. Our police chief wanted to say a few words before taking questions. Chief, said the mayor. First, I want to echo what our mayor said. This is a tragedy, and it is not who we are, and is not welcome in our community. I want everyone in the community to be on guard and call the police if anything seems out of place. We have an individual who has used a handgun to kill a child. Gun violence has plagued our country and especially our schools for far too long. This is why this department supports sensible gun control measures. We're asking for those of you out there that are enraged, as we are about this, coming to our doorstep, to not try to find and hunt this individual down on your own. Let us handle that part. The last thing we need to have is a good guy with a gun fire off and shoot innocent people. We already have one child down. We don't need any others. For those of you who go by the eye for an eye model, you are not judge, jury, or executioner. Let us do the job you have hired us to do. We will find the individual and bring them to justice. We do need your help in reporting any unusual activity in the community. That is the job you signed up for by living in this community. We have the responsibility to each other. At this time, I want to introduce the lead detective on this case, Detective Maurice Courtney, said the police chief as he stepped away from the microphone and Detective Courtney took his place. Thank you, Chief. One of the duties no police officer wants is to inform a parent that their child has died. I was called upon today to do just that, as many police officers and detectives all around our country do every day. I'm reminded of Seneca, who said, "Only time can heal what reason cannot." We don't understand these monsters amongst us. We don't always know their reasoning. What we do have is those of us behind the badge to keep everyone safe. Today we failed, and I don't take failure well. I wasn't hired here to fail. I was hired to solve these types of crimes. Trust me, I would love to be put out of a job, but here we are today. I want to echo what the chief said. Don't go after this individual on your own. That is what we are trained to do. So let us do our job. You are not going to bring this child back by going off half-cocked and taking this fiend out. You will rob these grieving parents closure and justice. The best help we can get from the public is reporting anything suspicious. See something, say something. I know it's something we all say and don't think about, but today, and until we catch this perpetrator, see something, say something. I'll take questions from the press, said Detective Courtney. The mayor said individual or individuals. Are we to assume that means there may be more than one person involved? Asked the female TV reporter. We are in the beginning stages of the investigation. Right now we are looking for one person because of the location of the shooting and the nature of the wounds. Again, it is early on in the investigation, and we will provide information as it becomes available, replied Detective Courtney. To be clear, I do not mean to refer that there is more than one individual of interest. As Detective Courtney pointed out, we are still early in the investigation, so my apologies, replied the mayor. Do you have any leads at this time? Asked another female TV reporter. Right now, no. The victim was shot inside the vestibule of Swan Victor Elementary School this morning, and the cameras showed nothing, replied Detective Courtney. Before you ask a follow-up question, the cameras were working perfectly. Somehow their signal was jammed right before and right after the shooting. So we do have a good timeline, but no description of who has done this. Good afternoon, Detective Courtney. I'm Mac Hale with AOL Podcast Journal, where he who is brave is free. Have the parents been called in for questioning, and what is the name of the victim? Asked Mark Hale. There were snickers and murmuring amongst the reporters. More than once you could hear, "A podcast isn't the press. Why is that guy here? He isn't a reporter," or "How can he ask such a heartless question?" We have talked with the parents and ruled them out as suspects. At this time, they would like to have their privacy respected. We're not revealing the name of the child at this time because it will not help our investigation, and the victim is a minor, replied Detective Courtney, seemingly annoyed with the question. Just a follow-up question, Detective. When you viewed the tapes for the cameras, you didn't detect anything wrong with the tape machine or the cameras, correct? Asked Mark. That's correct. We think that something interfered with the camera's ability to record, said Detective Courtney. So, you want us to believe that there was a shooting that no one heard, no one saw, and you are not giving out the names of the victim or a description of the alleged assailant. You and the chief don't want people to go out and defend their community. Isn't this just a ploy to get the mayor reelected for another term? Replied Mac. The rest of the reporters were stunned to hear such blatant disrespect and heartlessness, and turned to Mac. The mayor pushed Detective Courtney aside and said, Mr. Hale, a journalist knows there is a fine line between slander and free speech. You are teetering on the edge of these claims. You're making statements instead of asking questions. Do you have any information on this shooting? I'm not making statements. I'm podcasting. I'm postulating other options that you may not have considered. And I did it in the form of a question, much like Jeopardy. It is telling that you haven't answered my question of, is this alleged shooting part of your plan to get elected? Your silence is most telling and most deafening, said Mack. Detective Courtney pushed the mayor out of the way and took his place at the podium. You didn't have to tell the parents their child died. You didn't have to see the father's face when he returned from identifying her body. You didn't have to answer the mother's question, did my child suffer? I'm the one who did that, and I'm the one who's going to find this animal among us and bring him to justice. So, you think it was a man that did this? How do you figure it was a man? Could have been a woman, in the way you are framing this alleged shooting. Just then, the police chief motioned to two officers standing by to remove Mark Hale. I think we're all just a little stressed out because this concerns a minor. It's understandable that tempers will fly. But we have our best detective on the case. I would just say something, see something. We will reach out and have another press conference when we have more information to share, said the police chief. As the chief was speaking, two officers escorted Mark Hale out of the press conference and down to the corner at the intersection. Some of the reporters noticed this and turned their attention to the scuffle they expected. I know my rights. That is a press conference, and I'm a member of the press, yelled Mark. The officers continued to escort him silently until they turned the corner, and Mark turned and walked into an adjoining office building. When a few of the reporters who followed made it to the corner, they saw the two police officers walking back without Mark. "Hey, where did you take that guy?" asked one of the reporters. "He left of his own accord. Have a good day," replied one of the officers. They returned to the site of the press conference and packed up the podium, while the TV reporters and camera crews were packing up their equipment. The police chief pulled Detective Courtney aside. "Do we need to reassign you for this case? I don't need you to take this so personally. I need the perp behind bars in a closed case. Keep your professionalism about you." "I'm sorry, Chief. The couple and everything was a bit much. I won't let it happen again. Next time, I will be the silent partner, okay? I want to get this guy too. I just haven't heard anyone so heartless and such a kook shouting that stuff since the high school shooting," said Detective Courtney. "I was on that case. It was my last one before I became chief. Just keep your head about you. Don't let the buzzards eat for free," said the chief. Thank you for listening to this episode of Create Art Podcast. If you enjoyed what you heard or absolutely hated it, hey, please feel free to leave me a comment right there on the website, or you can email me, timothy@createartpodcast.com. If you got something out of any of the episodes here, please consider sharing it with a friend. And if you would, also let me know what would make this a 5-star podcast, I'd like to hear that. I want to make sure that I'm helping you tame your inner critic and create more than you consume. By the way, I run another podcast called Find a Podcast About, and that's where I help you outsmart the algorithm and find your next binge-worthy podcast. You can find that at findapodcastabout.xyz. If you go to the website, there's a way where you can leave me an actual voicemail, which I think is pretty nifty. Anyhow, I have a lot of reviews there of different podcasts from different genres, and I even have some interviews from the podcasters themselves. So if you're looking for a new podcast with a great recommendation, with a well thought out critique of everything you need to know about the podcast, then go to findapodcastabout.xyz. We'll see you next time.